In this segment, Stephanie Miller is joined by Glenn Kirschner. Together, the two discuss the radical assaults on how the federal government works.
Accountability will come to these people if we keep fighting for it. I mean, it may take a while, but, listen, Rudy was disbarred. Kenneth Chesbrough was disbarred. Jenna Ellis was suspended from the practice of law. It is our responsibility to make sure we don't forget that accountability has to come to these people, including folks like Pam Bondi and Emil Bove and Todd Blanche. Someday accountability will catch up with them, and we're going to be here to make sure that happens.
Okay, where do we even start? So let's see. Trump and Hegseth raging over bombshell leak. They reveal an FBI criminal probe. So let me get this straight. They're going to probe the accurate intelligence that was leaked something that after the thing, but not an investigation of Hegseth for leaking a war plan before a military operation. Is that where we are?
Yeah. Steph, where we are is, this is like a reality show if it were produced by George Orwell, right? Because you might as well just consolidate all of the institutions of government under Donald Trump and label it the Ministry of Truth. Because as we all know, the Ministry of Truth was the governmental institution in George Orwell's 1984 that was responsible for drafting and disseminating propaganda to the people to mislead them. That is what we're experiencing.
This latest ridiculousness of him saying that he claimed in a Truth Social post Democrats are behind the leak and called for them to be prosecuted. They admitted they didn't brief any Democrats on this. What Democrats? I mean, once again, are we at the fabricating evidence part of FBI investigations?
Steph, he's only fooling the gullible, right? And the gullible are going to stand with him every step of the way, regardless of how idiotic and how, far from the truth these claims are. I don't know how the Republicans in Congress, and I'm never going to stop yelling at them and encouraging them to do something to actually represent the interests of their constituents and save democracy in the process. We can't give them a pass. But how can they continue to buy in to this and support and prop up somebody who really is, as former Justice Kennedy said, in the process of destroying American democracy?
Yeah. Glenn, Senator Ron Johnson said a couple days ago, Democrats can scream about Trump's Iran airstrikes, but there's really nothing they can do. I think it was Mike Johnson that just said the War Powers Act is, I don't know, something, never mind, unconstitutional, something like that. That's, it just, we have come down to them just saying it's okay if Trump does it. We just don't care.
Yeah. And they don't care because they've given up their power long ago. He has yet to brief them, and they were entitled by law to a briefing within 48 hours. The rule of law.
And then they leaked the briefing they didn't get, Glenn.
They leaked the briefing they didn't get. So I guess, what are they? They have ESP. They're clairvoyant. Somehow they just, by osmosis, get this information and leak it. Yeah. Again, he's only fooling the gullible.
Yeah. So you had a couple of blue skies. You said Trump's DOJ sues all federal judges in Maryland for a 2-day pause on deportations. We also have that you said judge denies DOJ's attempt to jail Albrego Garcia pending trial. I just opened this segment because we're here in LA, Glenn, talking about the wildly illegal and unconstitutional stuff that is happening in LA as it regards ICE and deportations. Can you just talk to us about, your threads in general?
Yeah, there's so much to unpack there. The minute I read the Abrego Garcia criminal indictment in Tennessee, I said, this is BS and this will fall. This will fall apart. We've already seen at this early stage it's falling apart because the magistrate judge looked at it and looked at the evidence that DOJ presented at the detention hearing and said, are you kidding me? This doesn't make any sense. It's based on triple hearsay from cooperators who are not reliable. And she wouldn't even order Abrego Garcia jailed pending this criminal trial. That's how bad it was. And so we've got that. We've got, what's going on in California.
I just love his lawyer. Did you see? He said he has 0 felony convictions, not 34, right. 0.
Yeah.
Snap.
Yeah. I'm glad he reminded us of that. The military deployed to the street. Today I'm interviewing a staff judge advocate, Army staff judge advocate who retired recently from the Army, because what I want to start talking about is, the need to obey lawful orders, but more importantly, the need to disobey unlawful orders. And we're going to start today's interview with the reference to Secretary Mark Esper saying when he, General Milley, and others were in the Oval Office during the first Trump term, Trump said, listen, why can't you just shoot the protesters in the legs? Because, Steph, that is where I fear we are heading with the military now deployed to the streets. And each military member will have to decide whether to obey an unlawful order or disobey an unlawful order.
Yeah, and it's not just here. Elaine threads, building a concentration camp in the middle of an alligator-infested swamp may be immoral and illegal and objectively cruel, but at least it will cost taxpayers $450 million a year. I feel like we're 3 months in, Glenn. This cannot stand. You know, I just played Tracy Chapman's Revolution, but that's what it feels like. You know, starting from the No Kings rally, this just cannot stand for 4 years.
Well, talking about a revolution sounds like a whisper, but I'll tell you, our whisper's getting a heck of a lot louder because we went from the hands-off rally, which was big, to the No Kings Day rally, which was far bigger. And I think we're just getting warmed up. I don't think we're going to back down. I think the resistance, the opposition is going to grow. And, you know, there are more folk who care about the survival of democracy than are rooting for the end of democracy. So we have to do our job. And, Steph, I wish there was a prosecutor or a judge or a politician who could save us, but there aren't. We are the ones who will save us. We're the only ones who can save us. And frankly, if the Dems could have saved us, they would have done it already because they want to save us, but they're not equipped to do it. We are the ones who will save us.
One last headline from Texas. ICE arrested 6-year-old boy with leukemia at immigration court. His family is suing. I said earlier, Glenn, I hope they all sue the bejesus. I hope there are Nuremberg-type trials at some point. I mean, how? I know it's not legal. How do you arrest someone that is at an immigration court going through a legal proceeding that is playing by the rules?
It gets complicated. If there is a lawful basis, if there is a warrant that's issued for somebody's arrest, that's another matter. Then the question becomes how, when, and where can you execute that warrant and take somebody into custody? But, you know, I don't know, Steph, the whole ICE thing, and I know the states are now strategizing how they can step up and deal with masked marauders who can't be identified as legitimate law enforcement. What do state law enforcement authorities do in the face of that? And I think that's a serious and a difficult question to wrestle with. But we can't just let the Trump administration continue to run roughshod over the Constitution and the due process rights of everybody. They're starting with the immigrants. They'll get around to us. Yeah. Believe me, they'll get around to us. And, you know, that's why, you know, we have to keep stepping up and speaking out.
Glenn, I know this isn't exactly your area, except that it's like this whole, they're just lawless, this whole party. Yesterday, the headlines, key Medicaid provision in Trump's bill is found to violate Senate rules. GOP is scrambling. I knew the next headline before you even sent it to me would be Republicans demand firing of woke parliamentarian. Yep. I mean,
okay, but let's start with some good news if we can take him at his word. Okay. John Thune said, yeah, that ain't going to happen.
Right.
Yeah.
So if he holds fast, but here's the other thing, Steph, because we've had a little bit of good news. We had another Trump lawyer, Kenneth Chesebro, just disbarred by New York, quote, effective immediately. And boy, they tear him up. And here's the thing, Steph, accountability will come to these people if we keep fighting for it. I mean, it may take a while, but, you know, listen, Rudy was disbarred. Kenneth Chesebro was disbarred. Jenna Ellis was suspended from the practice of law. It is our responsibility to make sure we don't forget that accountability has to come to these people, including folks like Pam Bondi and Emil Bove and Todd Blanche. Someday accountability will catch up with them, and we're going to be here to make sure that happens.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you if Emil Bove is going to get confirmed. I'm going to say that your answer is you've never said you to a court. But that kind of sums up the entire Trump,
it's stunning that he told a room full of DOJ lawyers, accountability will come to these people if we keep fighting for it. I mean, it may take a while, but, you know, listen, Rudy was disbarred. Kenneth Chesebro was disbarred. Jenna Ellis was suspended from the practice of law. It is our responsibility to make sure we don't forget that accountability has to come to these people, including folks like Pam Bondi and Emil Bove and Todd Blanche. Someday accountability will catch up with them, and we're going to be here to make sure that happens.
Yeah.